folks, welcome back. So today we got to talk about old Robert Tellis. We represent the lollipop guild. All right, so you probably saw, but last week, Robert Tellis, former Las Vegas politician, he was the public administrator, was found guilty of the 2022 brutal murder of journalist Jeff Gearman. Journalist Jeff Gearman had been covering politics at the time in the Las Vegas area and had put out 3 negative stories about Robert Tellis and the alleged hostile work environment that Robert Tellis was creating within his public administrator's office. So stories started coming out that Robert Tellis is a mean little bully, that he was having episodes of pure rage. All right, listen, Tullis, if you could at least try to limit your episodes of pure rage as much as possible, I think it would go a long way as far as morale here at the office. Just as much as you can, the pure rage episodes, just as few and far between as possible, pal. Thank you. Then there was another story where a lady that had worked for the previous public administrator was sitting in her office. It was the time of transition. Robert Tullis had just taken over the role, and she was just sitting in her office, not doing much. Oh, hey, look, the sun's coming through the window. I like that. Then all of a sudden, Robert Tullis barged in her office, walked straight up to her desk, slapped her desk with both hands really loud, and said, "Listen, lady, I'm the new public administrator around here. We're going to rip the Band-Aid off hard and fast. I'm in charge now." And she was sitting there like, I didn't say anything. And also, barging in like that and slapping the desk like a lunatic is not even close to acceptable behavior, Robert. And then as things in the office were really starting to get kind of bad, apparently Robert Tullis made a new rule saying, "All right, listen up, everybody. Robert Tullis is here. The new rule, everybody working in this office, you are no longer allowed to speak to each other. No one speaks to each other at all starting now. That's the new rule. I'm Robert Tullis." It's like, what do you mean we can't speak to each other? What are we, dating R. Kelly? This is horrible, Robert. This is beyond awful working for you. I can't believe how bad this is. And so as all of this stuff is happening, a small group of employees within Robert Tellis's public administrator's office were saying, you know what, something's got to give. This is awful. This is not right. We got to do something. And the plan was, you know what, let's go tell a journalist about this. The people that voted for Robert Tullis, he's a public official, the people that are maybe going to vote for him in the next election, they really should know what's happening within his office and how he is conducting himself. And so they went and they found journalist Jeff Gearman and told him the scoop. Yeah, episodes of pure rage, rules you can't speak to each other, he's slapping desks like a lunatic. Listen to all this stuff. And so journalist Jeff Gearman, with his new scoop, he wrote a story. He puts it out. He puts out another story. He puts out another one. All the while, Robert Tullis is heading to his re-election. And then the re-election is here, and he loses. He took actually 3rd place, but it was really close. All of them were within a couple thousand votes. And so a couple thousand votes is nothing. That is really close. So it is probable to say that these 3 articles that were written by journalist Jeff Gearman about how he was conducting himself in his public administrator's office most likely did cause him to lose his re-election. And Robert Tullis, his personality is so bad. Whatever serious mental disorders he has going on, he has a total inability to have the thought process of, you know what, this is my fault. Of course it's going to make the news. I was a elected official. Anytime an elected official has stories like that in their office and misconduct and stuff like that, it always is a news story. If it wasn't journalist Jeff Gearman that put it out, it would have been some other journalist. What do I expect? Making rules that people can't speak to each other and conducting myself like a little bully. this is my fault and I just need to be better. And whatever my next chapter is in life, I need to learn from this chapter and try to treat people right and be better next time. He does not have the ability to have that thought process. Robert Tellis's thought process was, this journalist took everything from me. I was the public administrator. That was my title and that was my power that I earned. I was supposed to do that. I made $130,000 a year. My family depended on that salary. What am I going to do now? That little rat journalist took everything from me. And so 3 of them came up leading to the re-election. He loses. Then a week later, another article comes out about him from journalist Jeff Gearman. And then about a month later, so it's been a month since he lost his highly coveted role as the public administrator. That was 2 years ago. And when Robert Tullis was up on the stand last week, he almost started crying, talking about losing that election. It was very important to him, that role. He thought that was going to be his life in politics. It was his new chapter. He liked the power. He liked the feeling that it gave him. He thought, I finally found what I'm supposed to do, and this journalist ruined it. And so he loses the election. A month later, so he's been dealing with losing the election, and he blames it on journalist Jeff Gearman. A month later, the county reaches out to Robert Tullis and said, journalist Jeff Gearman made a public records request of all of the inner office communications between you and, oh yeah, that's another scandal, is that Robert Tullis was having an affair with someone in the office. Her name was Roberta. So a month after he loses, 4 articles by Jeff Gearman had come out already. And then a month later, the county reaches out to Tullis and says, all right, so the journalist that's been writing those stories, he put in a public records request for all of the inner office communications between you and Roberta, the alleged affair, which he did admit to. And so we're going to start getting that together. And at that point, Robert Tullis, former Las Vegas public administrator, had lost his re-election, made the insane decision, you know what? This guy, he thinks he's going to write another article about me. He already ruined my life, ruined my career. He thinks he can just do whatever he wants and nothing's going to happen. You know what? I'm going to kill this journalist. And we know the plan just from the way it played out. And so let's just quickly go over Robert Tullis, because it doesn't come around very often where somebody has not only the capability of brutally murdering someone. I mean, a lot of people, you might fantasize about it. You might say, God, I hate that guy. There's nothing more in the world that I just want to stab that guy to death. That my boss, well, whoever it is, but very few people, when it comes down to it, like, all right, here's a knife, go do it. You're like, are you serious? There's no way I could do it. What am I, a psycho killer? No, I want to fantasize about it. I want to think about it. I want to enjoy the thought, but I'm never going to do it. You know, at the end of the day, that person I want to kill, I hope nothing, I hope the best for them and their family. I do hate them and whatever, but Tullis, whatever severe mental disorders he has, he is capable of doing it. So there's that one thing. But that, coupled with the stupidity that he could pull it off, a lot of times there aren't both of those. Maybe someone's dumb enough to do it, but they don't have the ability to actually do it, or someone has the ability to actually do it. I could do it, but I'm not stupid enough to ruin my freedom over this journalist. But Robert Tullis has both. And so we get to see, and his plan was get a disguise. He went with a giant sombrero. I actually put an order in. I think I found the one online, but it's going to take like 2 weeks to get here, and I just wanted to do this episode. I was going to do the whole episode wearing the same giant sun hat that he was wearing. So he's wearing a big sombrero, or actually, I think it's the Asian version of the sombrero. Great hats either way. I think I've said it on this channel before. I think the #1 best hat ever invented is the Mexican sombrero with the dangly balls all the way around. So when you go like this, they all like jiggle and stuff. But anyway, so he's wearing an Asian sombrero, the orange construction vest, pants, and Nike shoes. So he got a disguise. And then really the main planning from what I can see is the disguise, leaving his phone at home. That was his he thought that was going to be a total showstopper. Oh, his phone. We checked the data. His phone didn't go over to journalist Jeff Gearman's house, so he couldn't have done it. That was his big. So leave the phone at home, disguise. I also think he probably either put a wig on under the big sun hat, because I'm thinking the chances of once you start trying to stab someone and you're in a fight, a knife fight with somebody, the chances the big sun hat gets knocked off. So I assume he either had like a hood or a wig, even because he's very bald, right? A wig under the sun hat. But anyway, from what you can see from the security camera footage, big giant sun hat that hangs over his face, orange construction vest, pants, and shoes. And someone in the Las Vegas area said that's a very typical outfit for landscapers. It's brutally hot. The sun is brutal. And so they want full coverage, full sun. And there was construction in the area. So it's safe to say he thought to himself, all right, so I'm going to dress up like a construction worker. They're walking around everywhere. If I do end up on camera, it's, oh, look, there's a hardworking landscaper headed to some shade to have some lunch. Good for them. And so leave the phone at home, landscaper disguise, and then that's really about it, where the thinking was good, because he drove one of his vehicles over. The car, I think, is technically registered to his wife, but he drove a maroon Yukon Denali to the area, got out, walked. So this is 15 hours after the county reached out to Robert Tullis and said, we're going to start putting together all of the emails and stuff for this public records request for journalist Jeff Gearman, and just letting you know we're going to put it together. And so that must have been the breaking point. Like I said earlier, I think he was thinking, you took everything from me, and still you think you can just keep writing articles like this is just some happy day of article writing day, and there's no going to be repercussions. You can just keep poking me. Well, you can't. I'm Robert Tullis, and I'm a total psycho. And so 15 hours after the county reached out to Robert Tullis is when the murder happened. And so after I think he got that final message from the county, we're going to start putting together the records, it really kicked into gear, and he did it quickly. And so he gets the disguise together, leaves the phone at home, drives over in the car, not the car that he normally uses, but it's his car, and he drives over, parks a distance away, there were hundreds of searches and pictures of journalist Jeff Gearman's of his house, his property, his neighborhood from Google Maps. So he definitely did some Google Map research to get a lay of the land. And then he waits for journalist Jeff Gearman, who I think they said he was 69 years old. He's an elderly journalist. Journalist Jeff Gearman's, I think, gets home, gets out of his car, and walks to like the side of his house, backyard area, side of the house. Tullis runs into that area, the side of the house area, goes full slasher movie psycho killer, stabs him to death, walks out of there, gets back in his maroon Yukon Denali, and drives home. His phone, Robert Tullis's phone, sat at his house for 6 hours while he was getting calls and text messages, including one from his wife going, "Where are you?" So 6 hours went by until Robert Tullis was back home and answering texts and whatnot. So they never found the murder weapon, so he stashed it during that. There were, I think, the main massive mistake that Robert Tullis made, and this is where it just gets mind-blowing. Like, you really thought you could pull that off and just kill your critic and just go get away with it and live a happy life? You really didn't think you were ruining your old life? You'd already lost the election. Just let it go. All right, some emails with you and Roberta are going to come out about God knows what. It's really insane that Robert Tullis, being a lawyer, he was a lawyer before the public administrator, thought that this was going to work. I really can't get over it. But anyway, so he gets home, and after 5 days, the investigation into journalist Jeff Gehrman's murder had turned out a lot of stuff. So one, they were easily able to follow Robert Tullis on various cameras. They do like painstaking video collection where they make grids and go to every single place. Do you have a Ring doorbell camera? Do you have a security camera? Can we look at it during this specific time? It's painstaking. It takes forever. And a lot of people that think, I'm going to get away with this, I got this, don't realize just how much effort they're going to put into finding security camera footage and how many cameras there are. And so I think that Robert Tullis thought, I'm going to stab him to death, dressed like a construction worker, landscaper, and then I'm going to walk off. Maybe they'll follow me on a couple Ring doorbells, on a couple cameras, but all of a sudden they'll lose me at some point. I'll be back at my car, which is a distance away, and I'll be good. Look at that. Well, they were able to follow him way longer and more detailed than I think he ever thought was possible. So they followed the person wearing the sun hat back to the Yukon Denali. So it comes out the next day, journalist Jeff Gehrman has been stabbed to death. And this is the security camera footage of the person that we think did it. And then this is them getting into the maroon Yukon Denali. Well, everybody knew that Robert Tullis hated journalist Jeff Gehrman and drove a maroon Yukon Denali. So all of a sudden, a lot of people are suspecting that it was Robert Tullis that killed the journalist that he hates. And so as soon as that's come out that it was a maroon Yukon Denali, journalists go over there and actually get footage of Robert Tullis frantically washing all of the cars. Also, another big downside with going with, I'm going to go full slasher movie psycho killer and do it with a knife. The chances that you end up with a really serious cut, I mean, it is a brutal process. It could take a while. It takes a lot of muscle to do it. And the chances that you end up with a serious cut on your own hand, as the knife could also break, and then you're just standing there like, now I just have to run away. And sure enough, Robert Tullis had an extremely severe cut on one of his fingers. And so so Tullis gets back, stashed the murder weapon somewhere. He's trying to get rid of evidence. I think he thought he got a little freaked out when he realized, oh man, they have more camera footage than I thought. They have the car. What am I going to do about the car? And I think he was planning to stash the giant sun hat and the shoes he was wearing other places. And I think the fact that they had him on camera and the vehicle, I think he got really scared. And instead of going off and ditching the sun hat in some garbage dumpster or getting rid of it, throwing it in the lake, whatever he did with the murder weapon, I think he's changed his plans and thought they're going to be tailing me. They're going to be all over me. They're going to follow me to the dumpster. And so he cut up the sun hat, put that in a toolbox, and he cut up the shoes, put those under the couch. He washed the car. He put a bandage on his finger. The phone looks a little suspicious for the 6 hours of, hey, where are you? And no responses. But other than that, I think we're all right. I think we're okay. And 5 days after the murder, they get search warrants. They come in, they find the cut-up hat, they find the shoes. He's got the cut finger. And then DNA, the big slam dunker, is they tested DNA under journalist Jeff Gearman's fingernails, and that also came up Robert Tellis. And so they found that he had DNA under his fingernails, and then they really rushed to get that. So now they found the sun hat cut up, the exact same Nikes that the killer that was on footage was wearing, with Robert Tellis's DNA in the shoe. They have the circumstantial evidence of the exact vehicle. His phone doesn't hurt him necessarily, but doesn't help him. Where were you for 6 hours? That happened to be where we're all concerned. Did you kill this journalist? All right, well, let's look at the phone. If he was here and texting and making calls and stuff, it wasn't him. Wait, 6 hours? And then on top of that, the DNA and the poor journalist's fingernails, and that was enough to arrest Robert Tellis for the murder of journalist Jeff Gearman. So that was in 2022. I want to actually, now that he's arrested, I want to actually go back to 2020 when he was the public administrator at this point, and a 911 call comes in to the Las Vegas Police Department, and it's Robert Tullis's wife. And she's going, "You got to send somebody quick, please. My husband, he's going crazy. He had too much to drink. He's scaring me and the kids. Please, if you could just hurry, please send someone quick." And then they send someone out there and they arrest Robert Tullis, and that you can watch the body cam footage. He's out getting arrested in his driveway going, "Who did I hit? Who the hell did I hit? Tell me, who did I hit? You're just trying to take me down because I'm a public official. You're just trying to take me down because I'm a public official." He says it over and over again. You guys are just trying to take me down because I'm a public official. Who did I hit? Tell me, who did I hit? That bitter inflection that drunk people get, like the "who the hell did I hit," just makes my skin crawl. Once you've heard it too many times in life, it just becomes insufferable. And so he's going, "I'm a public official." And as he keeps saying it, it's getting sadder and sadder. And it sounds like he's trying to convince himself, "I'm a public official. I'm a public official. Everyone's trying to take me down because I'm a public official." And after I saw that, the "everyone's trying to take me down because I'm a public official" body camera footage, that was in my head. Everyone's trying to take me down. And then in interviews, he'll say that exact sentence. "They're trying to take me down." And up on the stand, he said it. And in the body cam footage, he said it 20 times. And I think it's safe to say that Robert Tullis, his motto is pretty much "everyone is trying to take me down," right? I already said he has a total inability to blame any of the bad stuff that happens to him on his awful personality. Because if you have an awful personality, not much goes good. And what happens with these people that are like Robert Tullis is they start a new chapter in life. They start a new career, a new job, a new relationship where no one knows them, and they usually interview pretty good. He's not dumb, or he doesn't smell or like really ugly or anything. And so a lot of times they interview really good and they'll get hired, and the new chapter in life starts, and it goes pretty good for a year or maybe two. And then all of a sudden everybody realizes what they are, which is a narcissistic vortex to hell, and there's nothing you can do. There's no way to handle them. There's nothing. And so people take, once either the new job that they get, people take drastic action to get away from them. Anybody that has a chance to transfer to a different business, they're going to immediately. People are going to request, "I'm not working with this guy. I'm not going to work with him." So all of a sudden it becomes a huge problem for the owners of the company or the managers, because all their good people are leaving or refusing to work with this new person. And so now they have to deal with the Robert Tellis type person. And then so their task, they have to figure out a way to legally fire them. So when inevitably it turns into a wrongful termination lawsuit, they have some sort of leg to stand on. And really, a person like Robert Tullis being hired is worst case nightmare scenario for any company or business. And then all of a sudden, Robert, the Robert Tullis type person is having to have meetings with the bosses and HR, and they're telling them, listen, everybody's refusing to work with you and we have to fire you. And then it turns into a lawsuit. And eventually they bottom out. They hit rock bottom, and their life, because of how awful their personality is just a series of those, both big and small. So they start a new job. Hey, the new person's pretty good. It seems kind of smart. That's awesome. And then you fast forward 2 years, and it's at total rock bottom. The people have transferred. People have refused to work with you. The bosses hate them. And it's just one of those after another. I was kind of reading about that bottoming out process, and I thought this was pretty interesting. It says, due to their lack of self-restraint, narcissists tend to spiral out of control. It's not rare that a narcissist will find themselves in a heap of trouble. And I think so. 2 things really fascinate me about this story. One, stories like this always remind me, damn, politicians really do murder each other and murder their critics. It really is a bloody, brutal, ruthless arena. Like, to go into the political arena, you got to wear rain boots at this point. It's always been like this because there's 2 inches of standing blood on the ground. Planes fall out of the sky. People get shot. People get poisoned. Someone's underwear got poisoned. Navalny's underwear got poisoned. That was like a year or 2 ago. I mean, what an insane world politics is. Can you imagine poison underwear? Who would see that coming? That's got to be the worst. Maybe that's how you really spice up the bedroom. It's like, you've heard of crotchless underwear? Well, that's nothing compared to poison underwear. So anyway, that's one of the things that truly fascinate me about this story. It's like, man, politics really is a blood sport. They murder each other and their critics. And then the second thing that fascinates me about this story is people like Robert Tullis with the whatever he is, a narcissist or a socio, how it says they oftentimes wind up in a heap of trouble. People like this, they wind up in these situations where all you can do is go, look at you, look at what you are doing. And where it really hit me in this case is, so Robert Tullis, right, pretty solid evidence against him. The hat, the shoes, the DNA, the whole thing. And so he is left. The only really defense that he was left with was, I was framed. And so he took the stand in his murder trial last week. And taking the stand in your own murder trial when you don't get to tell the truth because you did do it has to be one of the most horrible experiences you can do as a human. Pretend tomorrow, okay? Today's the night before you have to get up on the stand in your murder trial, and it's probably going to be the defining footage of your whole life. You know you can't tell the truth on a bunch of the questions that are going to be asked. You're probably going to start sweating. Everyone's going to be staring at you. It's going to go on for hours and hours. I mean, truly a brutal experience to go through. Well, it's not even like Tullis has to lie about a couple things. He's going with, I was framed. I was totally framed. And having to go up on the stand and realistically try to explain how you were framed for this murder and it wasn't you. And once again, you actually are the victim. I'm the victim again. That's an incredibly insane place to be in life. Like I was watching Tullis up on the stand trying to get across. Yeah, I was framed by this and just kept thinking, look at you, Robert. How did you end up here? That is something. Right? You're up on the stand pretending you were. And so, all right, so let's talk about Robert Tullis up on the stand. Before that, I just wanted to say the prosecution's case was about as straightforward and simple and nothing crazy as you can imagine. Here's the motive. These articles are coming out. Here's the evidence. The DNA under poor journalist Jeff Gearman's fingernails. Found the hat at his place, the shoes, the car. This is his car in the pictures, the same exact car. They didn't have to hide any parts of what actually happened. It just was here's the evidence. Okay, so that's the prosecution. The defense really, his defense lawyers weren't pushing he was framed as much as Robert Tullis was. The defense's case was pretty much there was one picture of the car where he didn't have the sun hat on, and you could just see the profile, the shadow of it, and it looked like the person possibly had hair, but it doesn't really look like real hair. That's why I think it's either a wig or a hood or something. But they basically based their whole defense on that one picture. Is look, that is the profile of the person in the car that had just walked to the car and gotten into the car after the murder. Look, they have hair. That can't be Robert Tullis because he's very, very bald. And so because there's hair, because Tullis does not have hair, he could not have done it. So that was really the defense attorneys. But Tullis was way more, I was framed. And the story of how he tried to convince everyone he was framed for the murder was, while he was public administrator, what the public administrator's office does is when someone dies and their property and their house is just sitting there because they just died, if no family members come forward or loved ones to deal with the estate and close it out and sell it and sell the belongings, if no one comes forward and it's just the person that died and their house is sitting there and nothing's happening, then the public administration's office takes over, processes all the belongings, sells them, puts the house on the market, does anything, protects the house during all that process so squatters don't. They take over the property in the house and process it until everything is sold, and then whatever money is sold they can give to relatives if they do come forward. So it's managing properties and estates of people that died where no relatives come forward. Well, as Robert Tullis is doing that job, he realizes that there's a realty company in town called Compass Realty that, according to Robert Tullis, which it does seem like he may have been right, according to Robert Tullis, they were essentially doing a scam that once someone dies and no one comes forward for the property, before the public administration's office could take over the property and deal with it, they could take over the property. And then once the Compass Realty had control over the property, there's a bunch of things that you can do, kind of scammy and schemy, to make more money, to give your friends more money. So just one of the little schemes sounds like Compass Realty would somehow take over the property after the person dies and then maybe rip out the kitchen and then have it appraised with the kitchen ripped out. So the appraisal of it is very low, and then sell it at that low appraisal figure to someone in Compass Realty that works there. So all of a sudden, say I'm an employee for Compass Realty, I buy this property that we sort of, with a little scheme, maybe weren't even supposed to take over, but then they sell it to me. I got to close this, hold on. Boiler kicked on. So then they sell it to me, then I quickly put in a cheap kitchen and flip it and make a bunch of money, so stuff like that. So Robert Tullis noticed that this realty company, Compass Realty, was doing this, and he thought, this is not right, this is a scheme, this is a scam. And so he reached out to law enforcement in the area. His contact became a guy named Detective Derek Jappy. So now Robert Tullis, this is years before the murder, or at least a year, is communicating now with Detective Jappy about this potential realty scheme that Compass Realty is possibly doing. Well, Detective Jappy opens up an investigation into Compass Realty and agrees that there is enough suspicion to keep the investigation going and to uncover every rock that he can. There doesn't seem to be anything. Detective Jappy got up on the stand. There doesn't seem to be any weirdness with that, or that he stopped investigating early, or he didn't investigate far enough. He started investigating Compass Realty, and while he was investigating Compass Realty, he was in communication with Rob Tullis, telling him what's going on, asking him questions, stuff like that. Well, after Robert Tullis loses his election, the next public administrator's office that gets in, whoever won after Robert Tullis and whoever the people they brought in as their people, also contacted Detective Jappy and said, we think the previous public administrator, Robert Tullis, was getting kickbacks, because how it works is when the public administrator's office takes over one of these properties and they process it however they do, and then when it's time to sell the property, they use a realtor in the area. And that's how realtors make money, right? It's not rocket science. They get a property to sell, they sell it, and they get a percentage of it. So how it had always worked is all of the properties that the public administrator's office ends up selling, they spread those around to a group of realtors. So it's like, all right, we're going to sell 30 properties this year. It's all going to be divided evenly among all of these realtors. Well, as soon as Robert Tullis took over and he was the public administrator, all of a sudden the big group of lawyers they used, it was changed to just one lawyer. So one lawyer was getting all of these properties from the public administrator's office. And so they're telling, the new public administrator's office is telling Detective Jappy, who happens just coincidentally also to be still investigating into Compass Realty after the old public administrator Tullis had told him about that. And so now he's hearing, yeah, that guy that you've been working with about the Compass Realty thing, we think he's getting kickbacks. We think he is giving all of the properties to this one realtor, and then they're splitting, the allegation was that Robert Tullis was getting 30% of all of the properties he was giving this one realtor. And so then the realtor would sell them and then get his percent, and then Tullis would get 30% of that. So now Detective Jappy is actually investigating Compass Realty because of the allegations Robert Tullis told him. And he did say, I did think it was suspicious, and I didn't think it was a cockamamie allegations that Tullis was saying. Things were coming up as suspicious with Compass Realty. But now he's also opened an investigation into the previous public administrator, Rob Tullis. And so he's doing both investigations simultaneously, and he gets up on the stand, and there was nothing suspicious about him. He actually investigated Rob Tullis as far out as he thought was acceptable, and thought, I didn't find anything that he was getting kickbacks. Those allegations from the new public administrator don't seem to be real. I don't think anything's happening, but I'm going to give my investigation, everything I've come up with, to the FBI. I assume because Robert Tullis was a public official. Just to make sure, I'm going to give my investigation that came up with, I don't think we should charge Robert Tullis with some scam or anything. I'm going to give that to the FBI, and then they can look over it and see if they agree. So he gave his investigation to the FBI, and they agreed with him and said, we don't think he's getting any kickbacks. We don't think that anything really happened. No charges will be brought. Okay, so that's the Tullis investigation that Detective Jappy was doing. The Compass Realty, the realty scheme that he was investigating because of the tip from Tullis, he is working through that investigation. He's finding some stuff. Things do look a little bit suspicious. So he thinks, I think the next point of this investigation is I think I need to get phone taps. I think the next logical step in this is I need to get phone taps. So he brought his folder of everything he's investigated on him, the whole thing. He brought that to the district attorney's office and said, here's what I've investigated so far. Here's the deal. I think to get anything further and to really close it down, I think that we're going to have to get wiretaps. Try using everything I've done so far to get these wiretaps. Well, the district attorney looked over it and said, Technically, these are loopholes. We're not saying they're good loopholes, but no, as we can see, no law is being broken at this time, and so we're not going to bring any charges. So Detective Jappy was like, all right, well, I guess that's the end of that one. And it was the end of the Robert Tullis investigation when the FBI said, yeah, we agree. We're not going to bring any charges. So those two investigations ended, right? And then, oh, I'm sorry. The Compass Realty one ended before the Robert Tullis one. They actually had put surveillance on Robert Tullis during this. So the Compass Realty one had ended, and the Robert Tullis investigation that ultimately led to no charges and the FBI saying, but that one was still going. So they were actually tailing Robert Tullis, and Detective Jappy said up on the stand, they kind of have a rule or a procedure that if they follow someone with one day, they don't follow them 2 days in a row because they use the same vehicles and the same people to do their tailing. And so they actually followed Robert Tullis, tailing him, trying to see if he was doing anything with this, getting kickbacks, allegedly, which turned out to be nothing, but they were tailing him. And then they stopped tailing him because it's like, all right, no 2 days in a row. And that next day he committed the murder. And so that right there is, I think, what Robert Tullis, now that he has to get up on the stand and do the nearly impossible, push the narrative that this was not me going slasher movie, psycho killer, because he wrote stories about me and all the evidence. I was framed by Detective Jappy. He must be in with Compass Realty. I was framed by Detective Jappy and Compass Realty because I was trying to put an end to their realty scheme where they were taking over these properties and making a bunch of money. And so they hired a combat-trained assassin. He said over and over again that because the journalist Jeff Gehrman was stabbed right in the heart, that it had to have been a combat-trained assassin. It couldn't have been him, Robert Tullis, because, hey, I'm not combat-trained. The amount of times he said that got a little bit ridiculous. I mean, I think I might start saying that too, just anytime I go into a room. Hey, everybody, excuse me a second. Over there, excuse me. Sorry. Yeah, it'll take a second. I just want everybody to know, and I just thought it would be important to let everybody know that I am not combat trained. Officially, in no way am I combat trained. Okay, so that was one of Robert Tullis, once he's up on the stand, his reasons that this couldn't have been him. This was definitely a combat trained assassin. Compass Realty, because Robert Tullis righteously was stopping their scam, they hired a combat-trained assassin, got the same vehicle as Robert Tullis, had the combat-trained assassin drive over, do the murder, make sure he was on film with all of the car and everything the same, and then plant the evidence, the shoes under the couch, plant the sun hat in the toolbox. And then this is where it starts to get really involved. Then they get his DNA somehow, get that in, place it either under the fingernails or have law enforcement say, we found this under his fingernails, but really it wasn't, to give that to the DNA expert. And where it really starts to get dumb, this whole all of these people, is so many people would have had to come together that really had no dog in the race, no reason to risk their life or reputation for little old Tullis. So it starts as Robert Tullis is ranting and raving that all of these people conspired against poor victim Robert Tullis. It starts to almost sound like when someone thinks that the CIA is listening to them through the radio, where he was going, it's Detective Jappy, and they're working with Compass Realty, and they hired a combat-trained assassin, and they're trying to ruin me. It's like, you ever heard of people think they're being gang stalked? Vice did a video about it years ago where they followed this guy named Richard Bruce, who is a homeless guy in LA. He just lives in his camper. But he thinks because he makes YouTube videos about how like politicians are lizard reptilians, because he makes lizard reptilian videos on YouTube, that he is constantly followed by the CIA or the government using helicopters, but he lives in LA, and so there's always helicopters flying over. But when he looks up and he sees a helicopter, he thinks it's for him. And if a cop car drives by, that's for me. And it really is. It's a whole, like that Vice video. It's it's pretty interesting. If you type in Vice gang stalking, it'll be the first one. But it's it's almost like some schizophrenia. Something's happening to these people, but it ruins their life because they're driving down the highway and they're thinking people are following them, and it's the CIA and it's the government, and it's really just someone behind them driving, and it ends up just truly ruining their life. And sitting and hearing Robert Tullis up there trying to make it sound realistic that upwards of 30 or 40 people all came together to conspire against victim Robert Tullis, it starts to be like, man, you got some issues, Tullis. And so anyway, he has to try to convince the jury that a realty company wanted him to be out of the picture, and so they hired the combat-trained assassin. They were able to do that without it getting out. I mean, imagine the Adelsons who actually did hire an assassin to kill Dan Markle. That's I think a realistic of what it looks like to actually hire. Like, you think it's going to go so smooth. I'm going to hire the assassin and then they're going to do it and no one's going to tell anything and it's just going to be smooth as silk, baby. We're going to get away with it, no problem. And in reality, you got to use the girlfriend to get to the person that's going to do the actual hit, and then both of them know, and then all of a sudden too many people know, and the cops get the one person and they give it up, and then they're testifying, and it's way harder than you think to just, I'm just going to hire a hitman. We're going to do the hit. It doesn't matter that 50 people know. Everyone's just going to go along with it and keep their mouth shut. It's just not realistic. And so then think about Robert Tullis the night before he got up on the stand, sitting in jail, twiddling his thumbs, knowing that the next day he's going to have to get up there and look at a jury, and his life is on the line, and try to paint the realistic picture that all these people conspired against them, and it was Detective Jappy and Compass Realty and also the local law enforcement, which Tullis was calling overzealous police officers that are willing to plug up a weak case for Detective Jappy. And also the DNA experts are in on it. And also, you know who else is in on it? The phone extraction experts. They used, what is it called, Celebrite? They used the same process to look at everybody's phones. And not only did Robert Tullis, or not only did the state's phone expert pull off all of the phone data with all of the pictures of journalist Jeff Gearman's neighborhood and his house and his property, but Robert Tullis hired his own phone expert that also all of those pictures and everything. And so once Tullis was up on the stand, he was saying that the shoes was placed, the hat was placed, all of those images on his phone, those were all placed there. And they were like, well, your expert that imaged your phone found all of that, the images of the murder victim's house and everything too. So, and he's, well, it was hacked, it was compromised, and it just gets so stupid after a while. And that's where it's like these people like Robert Tullis, where they just have these bottom outs in life, where they hit rock bottom, and it's such a ridiculous situation that they end up in. All you can do is say, look at you, Robert Tullis, look at you, you're up on the stand trying to say that half the town of Las Vegas came together to conspire against you, and this realty company was able to hire an assassin, and then nothing came out, and it just gets so dumb. And I really don't think people realize having that task to go up on the stand and try to pull that off has to be one of the worst things that you can do. As far as like public speaking situations, I don't think it could get much worse. Like, imagine how nervous you are when you know you have to give a speech at a wedding and you just want it to be over. It's like, I can't even really enjoy life until I just am on the other side of that speech. Multiply that by about 10 million. That's what getting up on the stand and trying to realistically portray that it's just this ridiculous conspiracy. And so I followed the story the whole time for 2 years since the murder happened, all the way to Robert Tullis up on the stand and then being found guilty. And the two things I was really interested to see what Robert Tullis, how he dealt with it, was one, the car, because I think he thought, if I park far away, they're not going to follow me on all those cameras all the way back, maybe a few at the close, but I'm going to get far enough away, they're going to lose me and I'll safely drive my car home. So driving his car, very dumb. That sealed the deal, really. The DNA and the car sealed the deal, in my opinion. So how is he going to, one, deal with the car? And then two, I wanted to know how, if he's going with I was framed and it was a conspiracy and a combat trained assassin, how is he going to link realistically Detective Jappy and all of that together so it's actually even somewhat believable for a jury? Those are the two things. The framing, how are you going to be believable with that, and the car? And so it took 2 years. He's finally up on the stand. It was last week, and I'm like, all right, here we go. I was sitting there going, I want to know how are you going to deal with the car and the ridiculous, I was framed. And it was stupider than I could ever imagined. How he dealt with the car was, he goes, so I did see that it was my exact car, but I was looking online and I saw this comment, and it's from a Colonel Bob Sanders. It's just like some person on the internet. Hey, so it's this person, Colonel Bob Sanders. If you see on their post, they said, look, the rims of the murder vehicle are different. They don't match each other. There's some rims on the car that are different from the other rims. And so he's up on the stand saying this. So look, Colonel Bob Sanders commented this. And so I saw that and go, oh, well, my rims match. So it couldn't be me. And then he looks at the jury like, huh? See, look, some random guy on the internet thought the rims didn't match. My rims do match. And so this could not have been me. I couldn't have done it. And so I kind of was like, wait, 2 years I've been waiting? How are you going to attempt to deal with the fact you drove your own car, Tullis, and his best shot, thinking about it for 2 years in jail, preparing his defense, and the best thing he could do is, hey, look, some rando on the internet commented this, and I attached myself to that, and that's what we're going with. I was picturing him frantically searching for just one comment that was backing him up, saying it was a different vehicle. Come on. Oh, come on. Wait, nothing. All of these are saying it's the same vehicle, and it was definitely Robert. Wait a second. Colonel Bob Custard. It's the rims don't. There it is. The rims don't match Colonel Bob. Yes. All right. Well, that's what we're going with, even though the rims on my car do match, and also the rims on the murderer's car do match too. Just some Colonel Bob Custard made a comment, and that made it onto the stand in a murder trial. Imagine Colonel Bob Custard sitting home watching the trial going, that's me. Calling his mom, I finally did something with my life. Turn on the channel and rewind like 5 minutes. That the murderer that went full slasher movie psycho killer and killed that journalist, he's using my comment. And then the mom is like, why did you call me on the phone? Just come upstairs and tell me. He's like, sorry, Mom. Hangs up the phone in the basement. But anyway, so that was just a random, probably Facebook comment, I assumed, was used as evidence as I didn't do it. Look, a comment. And then the second chunk that I was really interested in is, how are you going to make it sound not insane that all of these people came together to conspire against Rob Tullis when there's no motivation to do it? Someone would have, in all of that group that was framing him, would have said, I'm not doing this. Why would I do this? I don't give a crap about Detective Jappy or Compass Realty or whatever. I'm blowing this whole thing up. And so Tullis gets up on the stand. He first tells his little backstory. He did a bunch of different careers, which makes sense because he probably bottomed out in all of them and hit rock bottom and then had to switch to a new one and a new chapter. And so he tells his backstory, but that's really easy for him. And then he tells the whole story about Compass Realty and possible scheme that they were doing. And that's incredibly easy for him to talk about because he has this righteous, I caught this scheme and I was going to see it to the end. This was not right. They were stealing from these families. And so that's a really easy part for him to talk about up on the stand. Not too hard, not too stressful, doesn't have to lie about anything. And then we move into the part where he has to make a realistic connection between Jappy, Compass Realty, the law enforcement that investigated it, the DNA expert, the crime lab, the phone experts. He's got to make that somehow, that all of those people come together and make it sound realistic and good. And remember, his freedom is on the line doing it. And you can tell he's nervous. He was stammering. He even said, I'm nervous at one point. And so you could tell what he planned to do was say, I am allowed my opinions, and my opinion is this. And so he was kind of did that a couple times. Well, you can't do that up on the stand. I don't think he knew that. He chose to do a narrative testimony where it's not his lawyer asking questions. He just stood up, sat up there during his part and told like a 3-hour story. And when it came to this part, and also parts about the killer, he wanted to say, like, in my opinion, the killer, when he drove there, well, you can't, your opinion up on the stand is irrelevant. So anytime he would say, he would start to like get into that section of like, all right, I'm about to explain how this big conspiracy works. He would inevitably, because it's dumb and didn't happen, he would inevitably have to give his opinion. Well, then there would be an immediate objection to either objection hearsay or objection relevance. And so the judge would say, stop him and say, your opinions aren't relevant. Please stick to your observations about the facts. Is that what she said? Something about like, please stick to your observations and the facts. Your opinions are not relevant right now. Well, that really jammed him up. And he would start on like a thought process and then get to a point where it's like, I got to use my opinion. And then if he did the opinion, it would be objected. And then he would stop. And so a lot of that, this is supposed to be the most important part. You got to explain. If you are going with, I was framed and this is a wild conspiracy with half of the law enforcement and everything, you better have a pretty good explanation for the whole thing. And here it is. He had just given his backstory. He had just explained the scheme that he blew up with Compass Realty, and now's the time he's going to put it all together. Here's the frame job. And he can't, because she's not letting him do anything with hearsay or that's his opinion. And so he starts doing things, it's like over and over he starts going, so like with Compass Realty, and then he can't say what he wants to, so he says, I'll just leave it to you to realize the importance of that part, or I'll let you check your notes later. Or he really wanted to talk about what someone else had testified, and the judge was like, you can't get up here and say someone else testified this, this, and this, and that's my opinion on it. You just have to say what you were going to say, and the jury can decide what the other person said and if it's real. So he gets really jammed up that the judge won't let him say anything about hearsay or anything about his opinion. And so he starts just going, well, I'll let you, the jury, I'll let you figure out why that's important. So everything turned into these little riddles, like I'll let you make the connection, or I'll let you realize why that's important, or I'll let you go back and check those notes. And it wasn't hitting. And then as he can feel in his bones, in his soul, this isn't going to be enough. I was planning to get up here and tell this wild conspiracy story, and I'm not allowed to do that because I'm not allowed to give my opinion. And now I'm talking in riddles, and they're having to make these connections, and it's not. And then I think because Robert Tullis could feel it up there, this is not going great. This is not enough to get me off of these charges. As almost a crutch or a lifeline, he'd run into kind of a dead end in his testimony where he couldn't say the thing he wanted to say. And so he started going, he'd all of a sudden look over at his lawyers who are sitting at the table. He'd look over and go, should we bring out that exhibit? Should we do that? And of course his lawyers aren't going to say no. So they're like, yeah, all right. And so now they're frantically trying to find some random exhibit that Tullis wants to republish. It's already published, but yeah, should we do that? But none of it was hitting. None of it seemed relevant. And there were these giant pauses. So he would be kind of running out of steam and talking in riddles. And I listened to that chunk 3 times, and he never was able to even have one coherent sentence about how Detective Jappy ended up working for Compass Realty and the combat trained assassin and how that worked. Not even one coherent sentence about that. It was just all right, so I'll let you. So at that point, Detective Jappy was still investigating them, and I'll let you decide while that's important. And then you kind of run out of steam and go, hey, should we republish that one exhibit? And they're like, yeah. And then so it would take a break, and there'd be this long 5-minute pause while they find the exhibit. Okay, it's republished. It doesn't hit. It's like barely even relevant. And then he starts it again 2 minutes, 3 minutes later. Hey, should we republish that one exhibit too? And his lawyer, you could tell his lawyers are like, what are you doing? Just tell your story. It was all chopped up, and a 5-minute break every 5 minutes. And he was not able to even close articulate why the giant conspiracy was realistic or believable at all. And so the jury, a couple days after that, found him guilty. The jury foreperson, I thought it was interesting, did an interview I think yesterday or the day before, and he said that actually what sealed the deal, it could have possibly been a mistrial. I think the profile picture where it looks like the killer has some sort of hair or a wig or something, that coupled with, I think, the fact that Robert Tullis was trailed and then not trailed the next day, those two things were making some of the jury feel a little bit, I don't know, that is a little weird. And they were feeling that way. And then when he got up on the stand and told and didn't have any explanations, and hey, should we republish that and just kind of waste time? I'm up here just floundering, and I'm trying to just grab for a lifeline. Let's just publish some more stuff. Once he got up there and told them all of that according to the jury foreperson, sealed the deal. They were like, this guy did it, and he was found guilty. And the way I understand it, in Nevada, the jury votes on the sentence, and they voted for life in prison with the possibility of parole, which, damn, I'm thinking going full slasher movie on someone, I don't think you should probably see the light of day. But it would probably also be hard once you're on the jury and they're like, all right, decide the sentence. And it's probably a little bit easier to go home and sleep at night knowing, listen, we didn't send someone away forever. If they rehabilitate and they do things, I guess they'll see the light of day again. But man, was this one for the books. I'm going to cut it off there. Got pretty long. I love you all. See you next time. Why? Shy.